What? What? No. Really? Really? No. The frickin' Darksaber? No way. No way. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Docking Bay 81, and today we're going to be focusing on the finale of Season 1 of Mandalorian, more specifically, the Darksaber. I'm assuming a lot of people that follow this channel probably already knew what it was, but with all the Baby Yoda hype, there's a lot of people that have tuned into the Mandalorian that weren't necessarily hardcore Star Wars fans that might not understand what that was at the end there, or understand that there is already a lot of established history with that particular lightsaber. So we're going to break down the history of the Darksaber, what it is, and why that's so important that this came into play at the very end here of Season 1. Pretty self-explanatory why it's called the Darksaber. It's a lightsaber that's black. So the Darksaber actually has a long history in the Star Wars mythos now that first started coming about during the Clone Wars animated series, when it was first wielded by a character named Pre Vizsla, who also happens to be voiced by none other than Jon Favreau, who, in case you forgot, is the showrunner for The Mandalorian. So you've got a lot of connective tissue coming together here. So the Darksaber goes back 1,000 years to when the first Mandalorian was accepted into the Jedi Order. His name was Tarre Vizsla, and that's about all we know about him. That's all the information that's available. The only other thing we know is that there's a statue of him on Mandalore, as he was considered to be one of the great Mandalorian rulers. And when he died, the Jedi Order kept his lightsaber in the archives of the Jedi Order. Years later, members of Clan Vizsla would raid the Jedi Temple, steal the Darksaber, and bring it back to Mandalore, where it would be passed down from father to son, leaders of Clan Vizsla, until eventually coming into the possession of Jon Favreau's character, Pre Vizsla. And that's kind of where we pick things up in the Clone Wars. So the first time we see Pre Vizsla using the Darksaber, it's in a battle against Obi-Wan Kenobi during Season 2 of Clone Wars. And it's here that we're kind of given a history lesson of the Darksaber, and we learn that it's become a symbol of status, of rule for Mandalore. He who wields the Darksaber controls the loyalty of the Mandalorian army, specifically the Death Watch commandos. So there's a whole bigger, longer, complicated story going on with the planet of Mandalore during the Clone Wars cartoon that really I could do an entirely separate video on, but we're just going to summarize real quick here. Pretty much Mandalore is having a civil war. Half of the planet wants to be peaceful pacifists living in harmony. The other wants to embrace their warrior heritage and culture and continue living the ancient warrior Mandalorian days. So throughout the Clone Wars series, Vizsla has been recruiting and growing his Mandalorian army, and eventually uses his influence to overthrow the current ruler of Mandalore with the assistance of none other than Darth Maul, which predictably ends up being a very bad idea. Vizsla gets greedy, betrays Maul, Maul gets mad, and then challenges Vizsla for the throne of Mandalore, which ends up giving us one of the more intense and brutal fight scenes of the entire Clone Wars series. Vizsla's death ends with Maul claiming the Darksaber for himself, hence Darth Maul becoming the ruler of Mandalore. See, like I said, this gets complicated, so we're going to try to keep it as short and simple as we can, because this is where things start to get tricky, because we have this gap of time where we have no idea what's happened on Mandalore. The Clone Wars television series ended prematurely in Season 5. The animated series was originally supposed to go all the way up to the very beginning of Episode 3 with the big battle over Coruscant. But because this is where the Clone Wars series ended, we don't ultimately know what happened with Darth Maul and rule over Mandalore. There's a period of time here where those events haven't been fully explained yet, because the next time we actually run into Darth Maul is during the finale of Season 2 of Rebels, where Darth Maul has been in exile for some time now. Later in Season 3, we find out that he still is in possession of the Darksaber, which he then tries to use in an ancient Sith ritual. By the end of the episode, the Darksaber is picked up by Sabine Wren, a Mandalorian runaway who also happens to be Clan Vizsla, so she knows exactly what this is. Realizing the importance and the significance of the Darksaber, they try to teach Sabine how to wield it properly.
Sabine and the rebels then lead an incursion against the current Imperial forces on Mandalore. By the time the series is over, they've dealt the Empire a major defeat, but they're not gone completely. Sabine ends up passing the Darksaber onto Bo-Katan, who is actually the sister of Duchess Satine, the former ruler of Mandalore. Sabine hopes that by giving Bo-Katan the Darksaber, she can use the significance of the Darksaber to unite the Mandalorian clans, which will end up driving the Empire off their planet once and for all.
And that's the end of what we know of what happened with the Darksaber, until the season finale of The Mandalorian, when the Darksaber showed up for the first time in live action. But how did it wind up in Moff Gideon's hands? Well, they kind of explained that earlier in the episode. The Mandalorian, whose name has now been revealed to be Din Djarin, reveals that Gideon is not somebody to be messed with. He apparently was the Moff that was in control of Mandalore and overseeing its people. It's also revealed at some point that Gideon is responsible for something known as the Night of 1,000 Tears, where Imperial gunships end up killing thousands of Mandalorian soldiers in training fields. Earlier in the season, it's revealed by our heavy armored Mandalorian friend that there was a great purge on Mandalore. So at some point during the Great Purge, possibly even during the Night of 1,000 Tears, Bo-Katan is murdered by Moff Gideon and he takes the Darksaber for himself, essentially putting him as the new ruler or overseer of Mandalore. And clearly, seeing as he can survive a TIE fighter crash, this guy's not somebody to be messed with.
But I would like to think that the significance of the Darksaber is going to end up factoring very heavily into Season 2.
So what comes next? Well, I guess we're going to have to wait until Season 2 of The Mandalorian, which debuts this fall. So what do we have to hold us over in the meantime? Well, as it turns out, the final season of Clone Wars will be coming to Disney Plus starting in February. So those final unresolved storylines of what happened to Darth Maul after he became ruler of Mandalore and how did that lead to him getting exiled, that's all supposed to get wrapped up here in this final season. So we'll definitely be getting more Darksaber action coming at us sooner than we think. Well, that'll do it for me, guys. Thanks for coming back to Docking Bay 81. Hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to click like and subscribe and to tell your friends about us. And as always, may the Force be with you.